Some stories fade with time. Their edges blur. The faces of those involved become hazy memories, and the sharp sting of tragedy dulls into a persistent, low ache. But other stories refuse to be forgotten. They linger in the shadows of a community, whispered about in hushed tones, for decades, waiting for a single thread of light to unravel the darkness. This is one of those stories. It's a tale that begins on an ordinary day, a day like any other, until it wasn't. A young girl walked out into the world, full of the simple hopes and dreams that occupy a youthful mind, and simply vanished. For 29 long years, her absence was a gaping wound, a question mark hanging over a small town that never truly healed. A ghost, haunting the periphery of everyday life. The initial days of her disappearance were a frantic blur of activity, a storm of posters, search parties, desperate pleas for information. The community rallied, combing through dense woods, canvassing quiet neighborhoods, their faces etched with a mixture of hope and growing dread. News crews descended, their cameras capturing the raw anguish of a family suddenly thrust into an unimaginable nightmare. But as days turned into weeks and weeks into months, the frantic energy began to wane. The search parties grew smaller, the news trucks drove away. The world, it seemed, was moving on, leaving behind a family trapped in a state of suspended animation, forever frozen in the moment she was last seen. To understand the depth of the loss, you must first understand the life that was taken. Yvonne Hollister was more than just a name on a missing person poster. She was a vibrant, breathing soul, a young woman just beginning to map out the contours of her future. She had recently made the courageous move to Nashville, Tennessee, seeking new opportunities and a fresh start. The day Yvonne Hollister vanished began like any other ordinary Tuesday in 1995. Later that evening she spoke to a friend on the phone, discussing plans for the upcoming weekend. The call ended with a casual, "Talk to you later," words that would hang in the air for decades, heavy with an unfulfilled promise. She was last seen leaving her apartment, stepping out into the evening, and then nothing. Her apartment was processed for any clue, but the scene was eerily normal. Her belongings were undisturbed, her car was still parked in its designated spot. There was no evidence of forced entry. As the investigation progressed, a shadow began to emerge, a vague and menacing presence in the background of Yvonne's life. Investigators focused their attention on him, questioning him repeatedly. He became the primary person of interest, a focal point in a case that was rapidly growing cold. Yet, without concrete evidence linking him to the disappearance, he remained just that, a shadow. As the investigation intensified, a frustrating pattern emerged. Every lead seemed to circle back to him, yet none could be definitively proven. Then, a new tip surfaced, threatening to upend the investigation. A witness came forward claiming to have seen a woman matching Yvonne's description, hitchhiking on a highway miles outside of Nashville that night. This false lead became a major diversion, a detour that led them down a rabbit hole of dead ends, consuming precious time and manpower. In 1997, nearly 2 years after Yvonne vanished, a human skull was found on a rural property not far from Nashville. However, dental records eventually confirmed that the skull did not belong to Yvonne Hollister. While one family found a tragic form of closure, Yvonne's was plunged back into the void of the unknown. Yvonne Hollister once again became a ghost, her name returning to a shelf in the cold case archive, waiting. For Yvonne's family, the passing years did not dull the pain, they sharpened it. Each birthday, holiday, family gathering was marked by her absence. In the late 2000s, a new detective was assigned to the cold case unit and took a fresh look at Yvonne's file. The ex-boyfriend was older, his life had moved on, but his story remained unchanged. It was another dead end, another closed door. The weight of 29 years of waiting seemed heavier than ever, and it felt as though the truth of what happened to Yvonne Hollister was destined to remain buried forever. The breakthrough didn't come from a dramatic deathbed confession. It arrived quietly, almost invisibly within the sterile confines of a forensic laboratory. The focus of this new effort was a few pieces of evidence previously considered forensically insignificant. Among them were clippings taken from Yvonne's fingernails. Investigators hoped that new, more sensitive DNA extraction techniques could find something, anything, that had been missed. The lab had been successful. They had isolated a tiny, but complete male DNA profile from underneath Yvonne's fingernails. The search, however, came back with no matches. What would have once been a dead end became a new starting line. Investigators turned to forensic genetic genealogy. They soon got a hit, a distant cousin. The genealogists used him as a starting point to construct a massive family tree. They cross-referenced public records, slowly mapping the genetic landscape. After months of painstaking work, possibilities narrowed to a single family branch. All signs pointed to a group of brothers who lived in the Nashville area in the 1990s. The investigation became incredibly focused. The focus of the investigation narrowed to one of the brothers, a man named Henry Lee Stallworth. He was not a known associate of Yvonne's. He had never been on the police's radar. The final step was to confirm that the DNA from the crime scene belonged to Stallworth. They began a quiet surveillance operation. Finally, they collected a water bottle he had thrown into a public trash can, a seemingly insignificant piece of garbage that held the key to justice. The DNA extracted was a perfect match to the male profile found under Yvonne Hollister's fingernails. After 29 years, investigators finally had their man. But the final twist was the most frustrating. As detectives prepared the arrest warrant, they made a shocking discovery. A final check showed Henry Lee Stallworth had died of natural causes in July 2023, just months before genetic genealogy identified him as the prime suspect. Justice had arrived. Too late. The man with the final answers was gone, taking his secrets to the grave. The arrest they had worked so tirelessly to secure would never happen. But in a quiet press conference, a different kind of justice emerged.
Today, we can say with certainty that he was responsible for the death of Yvonne Hollister. The case is officially cleared.
This public accounting was, in itself, a profound measure of justice. It confirmed what Yvonne's family had always known: she had not run away. The DNA evidence, her silent confession from beyond the grave, spoke to her strength in her final moments. It proved she was not a passive victim, but a fighter until the very end. This resolution allows her memory to be one of love, vibrancy, and courage, rather than one defined solely by the mystery of her absence. It is a testament to the detectives who refused to give up, and the scientists who developed the tools to hear whispers from the past. And a measure of justice, however delayed, can finally bring a long-awaited and deeply needed peace.